Everybody, welcome back. I'm Andy. There's Brent. Hi, Brent.
Hi, Brent.
Josh.
Yo.
We are back. The Fans in Motion podcast. We are live. Hectic. Took a lot to get this three of us together for this quick little episode here, but we're here. You guys don't need to hear our problems. We are. This episode, Josh. I want to jump right to it as far as what it's about. This is one, you tell us what it is, but this is really your episode, right?
Well, you were off Fingerfin and Shamu for your 3-week vacation to SeaWorld or wherever the hell you were doing, so you weren't around.
Yeah.
And Brent had COVID or something, so
I'm sick.
he wasn't around. So
No voice.
we were able to schedule an interview with Glen Burtnik of Styx, currently of the Weeklings and big songwriter. So I ended up having to do it myself. So the interview is just me and Glen. For Night Ranger fans who maybe are not aware of Glen Burtnik, Glen, we'll find out, has a lot of connections in the music business, but the biggest one as it relates to Night Ranger is when Night Ranger broke up and Jack Blades joins Damn Yankees with Tommy Shaw and Ted Nugent. At that same time, Styx is starting to get back together, which Tommy had originally decided to do. They had to wait for Dennis DeYoung, though. In that time period that they're waiting for Dennis, Tommy hooks up with Ted and Jack. Styx that train starts rolling. Tommy's gone. They hire Glen Burtnik to replace Tommy Shaw. So while you have Damn Yankees going, you also have this other version of Styx going with Glen Burtnik. And there is, he talks about them in the studio, them being Styx and, being competitive with Damn Yankees. And there's a great story of him on stage with Styx and looking out in the crowd and seeing Tommy Shaw.
Oh my God.
That's
got to be a little intimidating.
Was that the one in Chicago?
That would have been in Syracuse, New York.
No, pardon me. That was when Damn Yankees and Styx were on a bill together.
Well,
or no, they played Chicago, and they mocked Babe. Forget it. I'm on the wrong story. Go ahead.
They mocked Babe in Chicago, but it was in Syracuse, New York, where one night it's at like the state fair. One night Styx is playing, the next night Damn Yankees is playing. So their paths kind of cross, and there is a scuffle and a fight. And
really,
nothing too crazy, but he talks about that. So yeah, that's how it kind of relates. And then most Night Ranger fans are obviously Tommy Shaw's Damn Yankees Styx fans as well. So he's with Styx during that time without Tommy Shaw. Well, Styx eventually reforms again in '96 with Tommy Shaw after the Damn Yankees thing kind of ends. And eventually Styx gets rid of Dennis DeYoung. And with Tommy Shaw leading Styx, they get Glen Burtnik back in the band to play bass for them. So Glen Burtnik is in Styx twice, once when it was led by Dennis DeYoung, and then once when it was led by Tommy Shaw. So it's just kind of weird that he's in the band with the guy that he replaced originally.
Yeah.
Now, does he?
Brent,
don't tell the answer. Just it's yes or no. Does he tell you which version was his favorite?
He does. Well, I don't say a favorite. We talk. I mean, he's very
that he preferred.
He's very open, and he talks about what was different between them and what was very similar between them. So he's very candid and does talk about those. But even without the whole Night Ranger, Damn Yankees, Styx drama, he's got an interesting career based on a lot of things. I mean, if you've ever heard the Patty Smyth song with Don Henley,
that was he he wrote one of my favorite songs.
And he talks about that. We get into that. Like, how do you sit down and write that song? And he talks about that day, and it was actually his birthday. But he talks about being with Patty Smyth and writing that. He's written #1 country songs in the late 90s that he'll talk about. But it's really a good history lesson on the music business, because it's crazy just how much money these businesses had in the 70s and 80s and how they're throwing it away. He worked a lot with Neil Schon and Jan Hammer. Hammer.
Jan. It was Jan.
No, he's in America. It's Jan. But he worked on a lot of those albums. He did the first Jan Hammer album in '79, and then when Neil and Jan were doing one of their albums, they didn't have a single, and they basically invite him to come back. Hey, will you help us write this single? But there's some Night Ranger connections in there. We talk about David Prater, who worked with Night Ranger on Feeding Off the Mojo, was a big producer for, I think he produced some Journey stuff, Dream Theater, but with the Night Ranger world was, the Feeding Off the Mojo era. He talks about getting record deals and losing record deals, basically joining Styx, and he basically he felt like he was, basically you're going to sell your soul, joining Styx, because he'll talk about his life, trying to be this solo artist, and now he's basically going to give that up to do that. Yeah. But he talks about when Tommy was in Damn Yankees. I told you about where he's up there singing Tommy's songs and Tommy's in the crowd, working with Dennis DeYoung. And some of the most interesting stuff is just talking about songwriting and how songs come about and how you can become emotionally invested in a song, and you think this is the greatest and you're showing everybody, but no one's really into that one, but they're interested in a song that you kind of threw off to the side that you didn't think much of. And he talks about that whole process. And Eddie Van Halen comes up in this.
Let's get my gum out of my mouth. I'm sorry.
Eddie Van Halen, and we recorded this before Eddie Van Halen passed away. So, but Eddie Van Halen does come up in this this interview. So, like I said, if you're just a fan of the rock, 80s rock, 90s rock, and just the music business in general, it's just an interesting ride. And it's just funny how, if you listen to the David Lauser interview, I don't know if you guys remember him talking about when John Carter signed Sammy Hagar to his deal. John Carter is the same guy that signed Glen Burtnik. Oh. And when we brought that up, he brings up where he was close to working on an album with Sammy in the 80s. Didn't materialize, but that's in there as well. So a lot of interesting stuff. I think you guys will enjoy.
I find it funny that none of you have seen Glen Burtnik in concert, have you?
I don't know if it'll be in this part or part 2. I talk about how every time I try to go see Glenn, something comes up. Like in 2003, 2004. 2003, it was this whole Iraq thing.
Oh,
so
that thing?
Yeah.
That little thing?
That little thing, where I was told on a Friday that I was leaving Monday. And a week and I had tickets to see Styx with, Glen Burtnik a week and a half later. And I was like, well, there goes that. But
I saw Glen Burtnik on that tour that's right behind you on that album. When he opened for the Hooters at Bogart's in Cincinnati, Ohio, the night before Thanksgiving.
Wow.
And the Hooters had a big show the next day in Philadelphia that was going to be simulcasted on MTV, their Welcome Home show.
Yeah.
So he's not going to talk about that, but...
had we been on the episode, he might have... we left Josh kind of high and dry. And unfortunately, I was reading his bio, in between since we've talked, and... I was like, man, I wish I would have liked to talk to this guy. He seems like he's got some just great stories. And in talking to you, you kind of told us how it went, and I was like,
And if you're a Night Ranger fan, you would enjoy Glen's music. He had the 2 solo albums in the 80s, which if you like, Big Life and 7 Wishes, stuff like that, you would enjoy those 2 albums. He released an album in 96 called Palookaville, which if you like because Neverland and 7 are they're a little bit more diverse. There's songs kind of all over the place. You got Mother Mayhem, then Sign of the Times, and then a ballad, Palookaville's a lot like that. It's just great songwriting, great singing. So I highly suggest if you like the music of Night Ranger and you're looking for something new to listen to, and you haven't listened to any Glen stuff, go get his Talking Code album from the 80s and Palookaville from the 90s. You won't be disappointed.
Good deal. Anything else, Brent, you want to add to the episode that you weren't part of?
No, just I had very much of a voice. I was sleeping a lot, and thank God that's over with.
Yeah.
Thank God. It was horrible.
You don't realize how hard it is to do an interview by yourself. I've never done interviews in my life before we started this thing. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. But
you're doing good, man.
Conversations. That way it takes the edge off.
Conversations that you're recording with with
and nobody to cover the pauses.
Yeah, with someone who I've looked on, who's been on my records and stuff for 30 years. And suddenly he's on my computer screen. I'm like, eh.
Hey, I'll have no problem if Jack Blades comes on and you two can't do it, Jack.
Well, I'll geek out a little bit on
Jack. Will probably state that he won't come on unless I'm not on here because, I don't like, Color Your Smile or something.
Oh, yeah. That's going to get back to him.
Yeah.
Dearest Jack. Click, 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 click.
But I did rank one of his songs number 1 on Dawn Patrol. So,
speaking of which, let's jump to the previous episode. Do we have any comments, any thoughts, feelings? I have to say I really enjoyed doing the episode, and I've enjoyed seeing some of the feedback and jumping in on some of the people's comments.
Who handled the number 2s?
Was that Nadelman? I think it was. Cracked me up because I didn't even catch it until he said something to me. I'm like, holy crap, that's the best part of I should have did that.
Yeah.
I'll double check, but I think that was Nadelman that said that.
Yeah,
I enjoyed I loved seeing people's lists, seeing what I agreed with and what I didn't. I'm like, oh man, you're wrong. You're wrong. Just like Josh, I think he told Dave, you're wrong.
Well, what I did find was a lot of people had Young Girl in Love, At Night She Sleeps, and Penny somewhere between 7 and 10. And then in there they would throw...
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Somewhere in there I was... You all right?
No, I'm looking at something.
Somewhere...
I wasn't correct. It wasn't Nadelman. It was Dave Glazer.
Somewhere in there they would throw in like a song you're just like, what? Number 8 would be Call My Name, or Night Ranger, the song, and I'm just like, all right. But it's always fun to see how other people rank songs or look at stuff, and I think obviously we'll do those again. I don't think we don't go in chronological order. Maybe next time we just do Don't Let Up or
new
just
album out.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yep.
Do something newer.
Yep. So we don't have to...
I wanted to chime in. It was Dave Glazer who put, this was funny. Number 10 was Young Girl in Love, 9 At Night She Sleeps, 8 was Penny, and then everything was 2 from there on out until Don't Tell Me You Love Me. And I have to say, I think my list was pretty close to his. That's also why I liked, because he had, Don't Tell Me You Love Me, Eddie, Sing Me Away, Night Ranger, Call My Name. The right list.
Andy. Sorry, whenever you say Call My Name, I want to say somebody's name.
He had the correct list.
Yeah, that was fun. For those who haven't watched it yet, what are you waiting on? I mean, we're not doing this for our health. Come on.
I mean, these are the episodes that should spark so much activity on the page, because it's just our opinions of these songs, and this is where you guys should all. There's 1,000 people on this page. This post should have 1,500 posts or comments on it.
Well, it was like somebody had asked last week, did they ever discuss doing a Night Ranger behind the music? I said, this is as close as you're going to get right now.
Yeah.
You know.
And if you can, if like where we were asking people to post their top 10 songs, and people were doing it on the Facebook page. By the way, this podcast is basically tied into our Facebook page. Go to the search thing on Facebook, just type in like Night Ranger Fans in Motion, click like, and that's basically the headquarters for everything we do. But people were posting their top 10 on the Facebook page, and if you can, just copy and paste that and post it on YouTube as well in the comments there.
Sure.
So people who aren't on the page can actually see that as well. So our army of Night Ranger fans who are posting their list, copy, paste, YouTube.
I love it.
I wanted to give a special shout out to the Kiss and Tail podcast. They promote us. You know, they'll talk about us on their show. And I think that's awesome. I actually recorded the video for them. It was like a minute long. I did like 28 takes because I couldn't send a 2-minute video trimming this sucker down, because they're doing an episode on Gene Simmons and what your thoughts are on Gene Simmons. And so I'm going to be on that episode next week for like 1 minute. But the Lion Man over there, he constantly plugs us, and thank you. If you're a Kiss fan, check it out, Kiss and Tail. They're on YouTube. They have a Facebook page as well.
And you can go see Brent on his special guest VJ on there, where he's just totally fucking up his first Kiss album.
No. I had a good first Kiss album.
That horrible. They would have never made a second one.
You're full of shit.
Kids.
And we're all invited to come on that show. So if you want to go hash it on an episode, and we'll hash something out.
There you go, Andy.
We'll do it, all three of us.
Andy, you can go on there and sneeze and get back pains and.
So Josh, how easy is it to get me lined up for our podcast?
Yeah. I'm not even thinking about another.
I'm just telling you, there's an open invitation to us. So if you all want to do it, it would be fun.
I'm ready. Whenever they're going to talk about Lick It Up, I'll go on.
Okay.
Not to pull the curtain back, but again, we always talk about how much goes into putting one of these together. Josh started this conversation to get this done on Monday, and it's Friday evening at 9:30 your times when we started.
Yeah, it's just with everyone having kids and lives and houses, and I help take care of my grandparents. I got a 3-year-old running around. It's just when our times can all.
Yeah. And this
mesh.
week for me, I had my birthday last week. My daughter's birthday was Monday. Thanks for everybody, by the way, with the birthday wishes. I appreciated that. Appreciated the 5150 glove that Josh put on there with my. I don't know what the hell to put. Body,
I'm not going on Photoshop and doing all that crazy stuff you did. So I just stole Richard Jenkins.
Yeah. And I had a feeling that's what it was going to be. I'm like, I'm just waiting for it. I'm like, there it is. No, my daughter had a birthday on Monday, so we had a birthday dinner for her. Then Tuesday was my only open day. And then Wednesday I had to run to my mom's. Thursday, I had no time this week.
Well, just like I said, just peeling back the curtain a little bit to let people know that it truly is. This is a labor of love, and sometimes the labor is a little harder, but we always find time to get around talking about the band that we love dearly, the guys from California.
And we haven't sent out of yet.
Well, the restraining orders aren't in place, so we don't have to worry about that. And speaking of our favorite band out of California, is there any news? Is there anything going on? I know we're still in this pandemic, and it's just hectic. And I see shows get posted, and I see shows get canceled. And does anybody have anything that they can speak of? Brent, I see you got your logo up. Should we show it to you first, or do you have any news?
Just the vinyls on Amazon that Josh has promoted.
Now you're stealing Josh's thunder. Josh, you got any news?
No, well, segue into it.
I don't know if I'm promoting it. I mean, I put for those that don't know, there is a reissue of Dawn Patrol and Midnight Madness coming out in late November and December on colored vinyl. These are official releases. I do get questions. Are these bootlegs or whatever? Basically, what is happening is is there is this record company called I Love Vinyl, and they have reissued many albums. I actually went and looked at some of them. I mean, they do the Jackson 5 and stuff like that. I mean, just all over the place. Donna Summer. So what they do is they will license, basically, because Universal owns it, they will license Dawn Patrol. Okay, we'll give you X amount of money for us to be able to produce X amount of copies. And once you get that permission and you are making your own, your own record, basically through your company of that reissue, that's an official release. And many bands do it. I mean, just what I'm going to show you here in a little bit is a Alice Cooper record, and it's from Music on Vinyl, the label, but they have licensed it through Epic and produced it. So it's an official release. So these are official releases. They're not bootlegs. They're very high, quality. I got the one they did from Styx. So they're on there. I've posted them. They're like $25 for the pre-order. And only other thing I know is Night Ranger next week has that show in Shipshewana, Indiana.
I thought it got canceled again.
I went on the website a couple nights ago. There was nothing about it being canceled. Okay. But there was also nothing about it being sold out still. So I don't know. We'll find out.
You got time to make it up there.
Hey, I got a 3-year-old. It probably wants me to be around on Halloween, but if you do go, BYOB, because there is not much in Shipshewana, Indiana. Yep. You are out in the middle of nowhere in Amish country.
Hey, Josh, can I go back real quick? I just want to, and I don't want to go too far off the beaten path of what we're talking about, but with these releases, now you say they're official releases, but Night Ranger isn't really involved in it at all, correct? This is Universal's project. They don't get it. Night Ranger's not getting money from this unless
Night Ranger would get money.
Royalties.
Yeah, they'll get royalties. But so what happens is basically in 1982 or 83, whatever, the record company, either be Boardwalk or MCA, I am going to give you money to give us an album. And when you hand in Midnight Madness, you're handing me a product that I paid for. That's the masters. So MCA, now Universal, owns those masters. Now, when they use them, yes, Universal makes money, but whoever performed on that with publishing and writing and all that stuff gets the royalties and everything on it as well. So Universal owns albums 1 through 5, through right. Midnight Madness. Mm-hmm. But
they own it, and the Night Ranger, it's just like it's being released again.
Night Ranger probably has no say in it. I can't say for sure. If Night Ranger was still on Universal, as a courtesy, Universal may go, hey, guys, this is what we're thinking about doing. Are you cool with that? Kind of like Kiss, all right? But Kiss is still with Universal, or still has a working relationship with Universal where they will kind of run stuff by them. But they, Kiss could say no. Universal could still do it if they want.
Yeah.
Now, Night Ranger, doesn't have a relationship with Universal, and I would highly doubt that they even consulted with them. I could be wrong,
right.
But they don't have to. They don't own those masters. So.
And then one last thing, you had said that. And I know you're not an expert. I'm just asking because you know more than I do about it, and you can give us a little bit of insight. But when said company does the I Love Vinyl, I think is what you said their name was, are they limited on how many they can press? Or can they just, like, when you pay for it, you just pay for, like, I'm going to run 5,000 copies or 500 copies?
Yeah, I mean, there has to be.
You can't go above. Even if sales go out the window.
There has to be some written agreement.
Some restriction.
Yeah.
Okay.
How it works, if there is, if we sell all 1,000 copies,
revisit it.
Do we get the same, built-in deal for another 1,000? These two albums are limited at 1,000 copies. That's how they're promoting it. So even when you buy it and there's that little strip on the side that tells you what's inside, it says it's 1,000 copies. And what they do is Dawn Patrol comes with the Boardwalk label. The Midnight Madness comes with the MCA label. What they're trying to do is make them authentic. Well, how can they do that? Well, MCA doesn't exist anymore. When Geffen bought MCA, Geffen owns all the MCA likeness. When Universal bought Geffen, well, guess what? They're buying MCA. And just like when MCA probably bought, I don't know if MCA bought Boardwalk, like, their name and image, but they could have bought the Boardwalk Night Ranger, package with Dawn Patrol. Yeah. And that's why I love vinyls, being able to use, the Boardwalk label on that. So yeah, it's just one of those things where
they got that right.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
I said it's nothing that I'm not a collector, so I'm not getting involved in it, but I'm fascinated by how they do that and how they get away with it. And not get away with it, I don't mean it as they're getting away with something. I mean how we're releasing an album that's
it's the same way, like I said, in Japan, where they license it, and when they're out, and they've got to relicense it again. So therefore, if they want to relicense it, they'll make the decision.
Excuse me. Real quick, anything else in news, Josh? Brent, anybody got anything else?
No, I think that's it with the whole Night Ranger world. I mean, we're still waiting on, some solo stuff to come out, but nothing at the moment.
Sure.
Well, before we get out of news, I do want to mention the passing of Tony Lewis. He was the bass player and lead singer of the band The Outfield. It's not Night Ranger related, but when we talk about these people, this is in our world. This is in the same ballpark.
Well, you and I saw him open for Night Ranger on the Big Red tour.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying it's a passing of someone, and no, he's not the status of an Eddie Van Halen or Neil Peart, but still a voice from our youth. I mean, everybody knows Your Love and those. We saw him once. Say It Isn't So. I'm drawing a blank. There's only 3 people in that band, and 2 of the 3 are dead. So, condolences to Tony Lewis's family, and rest easy, sir. Brent, is there anything Fans in Motion related that you want to talk about?
Fans in Motion news?
News.
Fans in Motion news on the page.
Is it Gary Gnu with the Gnus?
Yeah, what's no news is good news. Dave Nadelman this week brought back an oldie but a goodie.
Yeah, this was fun.
Yeah, he brought back the High Road Easter egg hunt with all the different album covers, and I had seen a thing where Andy, I got a message and it said Andy Parker mentioned you in the comment. He said Brent Walter could do this, so I had to hook up my external hard drive from when. What year did this come out, Josh?
2014.
14, yeah.
Well, I had to go back to my 2000 through all my crap, and and I already had it marked up because I had sent it to Andy the day I saw it. But earlier in the day, there's also another version of the cover that doesn't have the Easter eggs on it, and luckily I saved that because I can't find that anywhere on the internet.
Yeah, and I'll say real quick is I didn't even look at the album cover that way. And Brent's messaging me like, "Hey, dude, did you see this?" And I'm like, "No." So,
and when I talk about lost opportunities for Night Ranger, they released that on vinyl, 500 copies, sold out quickly, and to where now if you can't even really find it on the secondary market. And if you do, you're probably paying anywhere $60 to $100 for it.
I saw somebody asking $200 about 2 months for it.
Yeah. And they could have easily, ran that first 500. It sells out. You do another 500 on colored vinyl, and with that original logo without the Easter eggs, and that would have sold out, or at least come damn near close. And if that sells out, guess what? 6 months later, you release it on a different colored vinyl, and another alternate cover, and just keep pushing it.
Yeah.
At least just reissue it one more, time, and they could have easily done it with the. But anyways, I digress.
What else you got, Brent?
I did the Fans in Motion little game.
I was so lost on this.
what song lyrics are, and it's you could play dirty, and on the other side is you could play clean. And we got a new member to the page, an Andy Chapin.
Yeah.
So, which was great because we have I've already done an Andy logo, and I've already done another Chapin logo. So this thing literally took me 3 minutes by just moving Andy's name over top of the other Chapin. And turns out Andy Chapin is Tom Chapin's brother. Tom told him in a comment, "Get ready to be known as Chapin Chapin." No, that ain't gonna work. We got a Fans in Motion update here. They are the Fitness Brothers. So if you have any fitness questions, you go to Andy and Tom Chapin, and they'll tell you how to lift a beer, how to smoke a cigarette after another one, and what have you. So the Fitness Brothers are our fitness gurus on our page. So welcome, Andy. It's time for your hazing.
Chapin, Hazen Chapin.
Yeah, the Fitness Brothers. That's what I decided we're gonna call them.
I thought you were doing something from Let 'Em Run. That's how far off I was on that thing. And I know Brent and I did this for a while back and forth.
Yeah, I was trying to
with
find.
each other.
I sent one to Andy. I sent one of a Nighttime Sky and the Texas Rangers, and he could not figure out that it was Night Ranger. That was the song.
I mean,
And then I sent one of Comfort Food and a picture of me. Comfort me.
I just thought Brent was ordering lunch.
Her room,
No.
that room that girl was in, though, didn't look very clean.
See, that's what threw me off.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying you're wrong.
No,
it just
she's
threw
clean.
Me off. I'm looking at that. I'm like,
She's
She
clean.
does, she's got a shitty diaper, probably.
But she's clean. Look how muddy everybody is, except for that one girl
all
at
right,
the top.
that's a just. You know what? It's it's easier to clean the kids on the left. I just gotta get a hose. That's
you
gonna
make
take.
your
Look,
own
you
game
got
and
you got
critique your
Legos there.
game.
You're gonna have to clean up a dirty diaper. A young kid that's fighting.
But she's playing.
I don't think so.
hey, I like the game. I look forward to it. I just
So
way off
you know,
base when I'm
I can't
right.
tell you that I'm gonna award a prize every time we do it.
What else?
So
we got?
I've already got the next one. It's real easy. I think I'm gonna do 2 in the same game because if you don't get it, you're an idiot if you don't get it right away when I post it. So
that'll be
we'll try to do this again next. Well, maybe Josh, we do the episodes on Tuesday.
Cool. Well, that's when we're supposed to do them.
And I got Amazing Race at 9:00 on Wednesday, and this was going on during the Amazing Race. I thought I should have never started this during the Amazing Race. So I'm running over commercials, putting X marks on people's answers, and so I'm not going to do it during the Amazing Race. I'm watching the Amazing Race. Screw y'all.
All right, what else? You got anything?
I got nothing else.
That wraps it up for Fans in Motion
Well,
stuff. Josh,
hold on. We
do you
got
have anything?
We had a big one. I thought we would touch on. We had our first Night Ranger member do a live feed on our page. Eric Levy did a little video promoting, I think, JC Powers.
Oh, that
His last
yeah.
contest.
Is that a live feed? Because I saw
Well,
the record.
it was a. I don't know if it was a live. It was a live video that he recorded in his car and posted to the page. So, our first Night Ranger member actually posting a video specifically to the page was on there. We celebrated the 25th anniversary of Feeding Off the Mojo coming out, quarter of a century, and yeah, I think that was pretty much. One thing I do like is seeing all the people buying like the new vinyl that we talked about, but also people are buying the old vinyl and posting it. I think Jackson posted that he got, I don't know, a couple of the albums, and someone posted
Tom
it.
Patrol Midnight and this
some
Nadelman guy, The Good Big Life.
And a girl, I can't remember who it was someone newer. She posted, she bought Big Life on vinyl. So it's just cool seeing people, kind of revisiting all that stuff. And
Yeah.
so.
Great music.
I still say CDs sound better,
Okay.
but the vinyl's cool to have.
No one's arguing with you on that.
Well, the reason why I always argue with the vinyl, especially from like Night Ranger, Dawn Patrol, Midnight Madness, and Seven Wishes, was that is originally how it was supposed to be released. Everything was designed for vinyl. So if you really want to see how the artwork and everything was originally intended and not for a CD packet or a cassette tape, you want to get the vinyl from that classic era. Now, Big Life, that's when they start kind of doing multiple designs for cassettes and CDs and so forth. But
they did a full digital recording on. No, that wasn't full digital. Man in Motion was full digital.
All right. Is there anything new you guys want to talk about? New music? Anything new you may have gotten? A shirt? A piece of memorabilia? Anything? Brent, you got anything? I don't, because I've been busy dealing with a broken garage door.
Still listening to my Diamond Rex, best album of the year. Psych Ward, get it? It's great. Josh, you got Amazon streaming. You need to check that out.
I will. I'll get there.
No, he won't.
I don't buy like stuff I have on CD from the 90s or 80s. I won't buy on new vinyl unless it's either on sale. Unless it's something I really, really enjoyed, I may go get it on vinyl eventually for full price. So I had some points on a credit card, and I went and bought Alice Cooper, The Last Temptation on vinyl. Oh. And which one of you guys can tell me the Night Ranger connection?
I can't tell you a Night Ranger connection, but I can tell you a comic book connection.
True, there is. And it does come with the
I have the comic book
insert here.
Neil Gaiman, the genius behind the Sandman. I don't know his involvement, but he's involved in that album.
Let's see, it's Chuck Garrick on bass. Who's the guy that
is Jack singing backup vocals on? Something?
No, Eric Singer I think is playing drums on that.
I don't think Eric Singer's on here.
Who's the guy that we spoke about that I can't think of his name? My mind just went blank. That played with Alice Cooper, but also was going to be in Damn Yankees from Brother Kane.
Damon Johnson.
Is he on that album?
Negative. All negatives. Anyways, Jack Blades and Tommy Shaw co-wrote 2 songs on here. 2 really great songs. One song called It's Me, and the other song, which is the title track, well, kind of. The album's called The Last Temptation, and this other track that they wrote is called You're My Temptation. A very good album. Came out, I think, when I was a senior in high school. Of course, me and one other buddy were the only people, into that music at the time. In school, everybody else was in the grunge. But Chris Cornell of Soundgarden co-wrote a couple songs on the album. And like I said, it's a really good album, and I did pay full price for it. And if you look, it's got the Epic, it was on Epic Records, but Music, I'm trying to think what that label is called. Music on Vinyl is the record company that licensed this and put this out. So there you go. That's the only thing new that I have.
Sweet. I have a new bathroom. We just got finished remodeling. But I can't show you a picture of it. So,
if only you had a phone or a camera on your phone.
Only there was a device that we could carry around and take pictures with.
All right.
If only you just go. I bet you the acoustics would be great there if you want to record in there one day.
It bounces a lot, man. There's no.
We could do the bathroom episodes. We could all record from our bathroom.
There's no noise cancellation going on in that room.
All right, let's get to the interview. We've yacked and yacked and yacked and yacked and yacked enough. No one is watching this, but if you are, before we get into the Glen Burtnik episode, click subscribe on the page, and go to Facebook, Fans in Motion, Night Ranger. Click like and join the page. We have done interviews with David Lauser of the Sammy Hagar Band, who has some ties with Night Ranger, and kind of has some of these stories connect with Glen Burtnik as well, and Eric Levy of Night Ranger, Joel Hoekstra, who is a Night Ranger now in Whitesnake and Trans-Siberian Orchestra, and we even go back in the Night Ranger history, back to Rubicon, where we interviewed Greg Eckler, who was in that band as well. And I don't know.
Our first conversation we had ever.
So. Yep. Anyways, anything else before we jump into that?
No. Sit back and enjoy this great interview that Josh did by himself, flying solo.
Yeah, that's what I said. Josh goes solo, interviews Glen Burtnik.
Here we go again, hands making circles at your kin, turn back again. Sky turning purple at the funeral of a friend who wasn't ready for the ending yet. Giant mess, sloppy disaster, and he left it for the rest to
welcome to another episode of Fans in Motion, and today we have the one and only incredibly talented gentleman and a scholar, Mr. Glen Burtnik. Normally, Glenn, I would have my other two co-hosts, Brent and Andy, here, and we would be clapping for you, but Brent can't talk, which is actually kind of nice. When he actually called me, I couldn't really hear him, and it was actually an improvement. And Andy, who has been on vacation and everything else, moved to Nashville over the last month. So we appreciate you coming on with us today.
Happy to be, yeah.
Well, I appreciate it. Now, you've been in the music business, the rock star business, for 40 years, and you've probably seen it all. But then 2020 hit and threw everybody for a loop. How are you keeping busy these days with everything that's going on?
It's a weird combination of elements, but I do have, I'm basically in 5 bands right now. And the one in which I write music and create records, we record and release records, is called the Weeklings, and that group has we've actually recorded a number of things in isolation with each of us. There's 4 guys in the band, each of us at home by ourselves, passing our ideas around via email and taking selfie videos of ourselves and recording in our, digital home workstations. And we've actually recorded a number of songs. Some are original, and it's, so that's a really amazing turn of events. It's forced me to get a little bit more into my home recording than I've been in the last 10 years. So there's that. And there are a number of, not as many, but there are a number of live concerts that have taken place during the summer, drive-in concerts and other concerts where people are socially distanced by where they're allowed to sit and tables and stuff like that. Now that the weather's getting colder where I am, which is, I'm in the Asbury Park, New Jersey area, those gigs might start to be going away. But other than that, I'm kind of painting and taking care of my house and feeding my cats. And I'm enjoying it, actually, even though I'm not working near as much as I usually do. Like I said, I'm in 5 bands, and I usually, like, for instance, the year before, 2019, it was unbelievable how busy I was, and 2020 was supposed to be even more crazy, but there you go. You never know, do you?
Now, have you done any of those drive-in concerts, like at the drive-in movie theaters? How did those go?
Pretty cool. The first one we did, the Weeklings did, it was warm. It was in New Hampshire. Each car had their own designated area, mm-hmm. and people were allowed. There was a square for each car, and there was a square in between you and the other car. But in any case, so nobody was too close, and you were welcome to, if you wanted to bring your lawn chair, you could sit outside your car, which everybody did. So it was a warm day. It was comfortable for everybody. It was during the day, but the venue set up a really nice stage for us. And there was we also broadcast on an FM bandwidth, just in case it did get cold or mm-hmm. raining or whatever. So people could listen on their radios if they were stuck in their cars. But that was the first one. And what made me happy was I was concerned that I was going to be standing on stage playing for a bunch of cars, but instead I got faces. Yeah. So that was a lot better.
Well, I saw there's a place in Pennsylvania called the Starlight Drive-In, I think it's called. And Night Ranger was supposed to do one of those type shows in August. It ended up being canceled, but I saw another band had played there, and they put up footage, and I'm watching it, and it's from the back, and it looks like you know that Cars movie from Disney or Pixar or whatever. You saw the band on the stage, and then the lighting from the stage, all you saw, instead of people in the crowd, you just saw all these cars in the crowd. Now, obviously, there's people sitting in front of it, but yeah, it was definitely looked like a different experience, and I'd never talked to anyone that had been there, or had even been to one, let alone performing at one. So, Glenn, you were raised in New Jersey, and my question is, what is it about New Jersey? There's musicians obviously from all over the United States, and you never hear, of, Nebraska's own, whoever, and it's just New Jersey. When you say New Jersey, it's almost tied in with artists like Springsteen, yourself, Southside Johnny, Bon Jovi. What is it about New Jersey? Is it an attitude? Is it something in the water? Is it what is it about New Jersey?
Well, first of all, it's highly populated. I guess that's one part of it. That the odds are you're going to get more bands out of a populated area. It's on the East Coast. Really close to New York City, and it's in between actually New York and Philadelphia, and so you're exposed to not only a lot of bands that come through to perform, but you're also exposed that there's a lot of venues. There's a lot of little bars and little clubs and big theaters and everything in between. And so I guess that's part of it, that, it's everybody kind of knows somebody that's in a band. So it's not that weird. Whereas, I don't know, for all I know, Arizona, it's hard to find a bass player if you want to start a band. I don't know. But I would guess that's part of it. And also, there is a history, and you are up against whoever, Springsteen, or if you want to go back further, you can, to Frank Sinatra, and everything in between. So maybe the stakes are a little higher. Maybe there's the bar is raised,
Now, yeah, it always seems like it's like a community, and like people wear it with a badge of honor. Bon Jovi naming their album after that, and Springsteen always, the Jersey Shore just seems to be a legend in itself. And now, is Beatlemania kind of where you first really got some, maybe national exposure? Was that your first?
Yeah.
Was the Beatles, like probably a lot of people in your generation, was the Beatles like your thing when you saw them on TV or whatever? Was that who you wanted to be, or was there another group, or was it the Beatles first and foremost?
Well, I always loved music. Before I could speak, I'm told, my family tells me, I would get emotional and cry over certain songs and things like that. So music was a big deal in my house, although there were no musicians when I was young. There was a lot of music, a lot of records. However, 1964, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, I Want to Hold Your Hand was number one. I had two older brothers who were kind of teenagers at the time. I was a kid, but it was unforgettable. It was just an unforgettable thing. The Beatles, it's hard to explain to somebody that wasn't there, but the Beatles were the number one news item culturally for pretty much most of their existence, from 64 until around 1970. So they're, 6 years of nonstop hit records, hit movies, they were culturally what the youth culture was about. And when the Beatles grew their mustaches, everybody grew their mustaches. And when the Beatles wore paisley shirts, everybody wore paisley shirts. They were trendsetters, style setters, and these incredible musicians and great songwriters. So they made these records that are still not going away. So yes, it probably changed my life more than anything. I often wonder, would I be a musician had it not been for the Beatles? I was aware of Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley and earlier music, but the Beatles definitely was like a call to action for me.
So today, what's your favorite Beatles album?
The White Album.
That would probably, that's usually in, like, it kind of sometimes changes with me.
Yeah.
White Album, I sometimes go between like Hard Day's Night, Help, but I usually end up with Abbey Road. Either that or Revolver. It's like where they're making that transition, kind of like Revolver. But yeah, the White Album, God, you can't go wrong with that either. But
well, don't forget Rubber Soul. I mean, it's really hard. To a favorite, and an amazing thing about them is that every album really is very different. It wasn't like they had a formula. Each one is like a whole different room that you walk into. So they were pretty amazing that way.
So you did the Beatlemania, which for those that don't know was, and hopefully I described this correctly, it started off as a Broadway musical, and it was basically based off the Beatles music, and you did maybe a West Coast version or an off-Broadway version. And what year would that have been when you were doing that?
1978 is when I joined. When I joined, the show had been going for a while, about a year. And so what they did was, it was successful in New York, and they opened a second show in Chicago, and then they opened a third show on the West Coast, and they had these, a cast of 4 guys in each cast, who were Beatles sound-alikes, look-alikes, kind of, sort of, and each show, as it turned out, had 2 bands. So you had 6 bands of fake Beatles, doing this show that was very successful. And so I auditioned. I'm left-handed. I play left-handed. I have droopy eyes. At least I looked a little bit more Paulish, I guess, back then. And I passed the audition. I played on Broadway a little bit, and then I was shipped out to the West Coast with Marshall Crenshaw. Marshall Crenshaw was my John, as they say, and I was his Paul. And we were, and I played in Beatlemania in New York, L.A., San Francisco, San Diego, because we stayed in L.A. for a year, then we went to San Francisco for 6 months, and then we went to San Diego for 4. So that was a really good experience, actually, because I thought I knew how to play Beatles songs before then, but when I'd already been a bar musician, but when I got to Beatlemania, I realized the stakes were higher, and they really wanted every note to be as close to perfect as what was on the records. Mm-hmm. So that really kind of helped me train my ear a little bit better. And, and I've always said, I didn't go to college, I went to Beatlemania, because that was the canon of music that I had to learn and I had to study. And that's a really great place to start.
Now, did you work with Mitch, I think it's Mitch Weissman, at all during that time?
I knew Mitch and we hung out, but no, Mitch was the original cast. He was the original Paul, and I was a couple of Pauls behind him, Mm-hmm. So we wouldn't be on the same show at the same time.
Okay.
You know.
I didn't know if you were like his understudy or anything like that at any point. And
not specifically an understudy, but
okay.
it's just a good guy.
He and for those that weren't around during that time period, I mean, Beatlemania was a big thing. I remember Mitch, who we just talked about, who was the original Paul. I think he actually played Paul like on Happy Days or Joni Loves Chachi or something like that. I mean, so it was, it, just like the Beatles, it kind of was just bigger than a Broadway show. It was, there for a time, very, from what I've read and seen, a very talked about and show that was out there. And again, just the popularity of it, like you said, Chicago, I think you said, in the West Coast, and having basically two bands for each city. Now, once that ends, and you joined a band called Helmet Boy, which I do not know much about. You were on with that band for one record, correct?
Yes.
Would that be the first time that you were ever able to go into a record store and go to the H's and look and see your picture on a album cover?
No, that was my second album. The first one, there was a jazz rock fusion pioneering band called the Mahavishnu Orchestra, of which I was a fan. And their keyboard player, the keyboard player was Jan Hammer, who made a lot of music with Jeff Beck and went on to make his biggest mark by doing the soundtrack to the Miami Vice series, television series. But at that point in '79, he was looking for a singer and keyboardist. So I'm a better guitarist than I am a keyboard player, but nevertheless, I got the gig, and we recorded an album and did a tour. And so that was my first album. Mm-hmm. Before then, Marshall Crenshaw and I had made a single while we were in Beatlemania together called I Hate Disco Music. This is some rare, trivial stuff I'm talking about here. But anyway, that record's available only from me. I own probably the only ones left in the world. But in any case, then after Jan Hammer, I got a call from David DeYoung, who was another John in Beatlemania, and he lived in LA along with Paul Trugman and Richard Grossman. They had a band called Helmet Boy. They got a record deal, and they were getting ready to make an album, and their producer said, I think you need one more guy. So they called me, and I came out and joined the band. We made one album. I never played a gig with Helmet Boy, even though they had played gigs before. Mm-hmm. It was just for the experience of making an album. And like I said, it was my second album, but it was, So it was, now I made 2 albums.
How does that happen to where they get a record deal, they bring you in, they release the album? Did they tour without you? Or, I mean, how do you put in all that effort to, get an album released and then no promotion or tour afterwards? Or was it just, did they not push the album, or just was the band done right when the album was released? How does that, I don't know. To me, like, as an outsider, you strive to get a record deal, you get it, and then nothing happens.
I was asking the very same question in 1979, but it was a simple matter of the manager wasn't going to put money into the act. The label had chose to not put money into the act. You know, you got to remember at that era, this is like post Fleetwood Mac and Saturday Night Fever. You know, the record labels were oozing money. They were just huge, and they had so much money that they probably, I'm going to guess this, but they probably need some tax write-offs. So, and maybe they signed too many acts, you know, and maybe we were one of 100 acts that had albums coming out that month, you know,
Yeah.
and maybe they only budgeted themselves for a certain amount of promotional, you know, dues, and so in for whatever reason, it was either decided that they wouldn't really support that record, or it wasn't decided at all. It just kind of fell through the cracks, and it's disappointing. I felt that way about the other album too, but I've had a career of that. You know,
Yeah.
that's you're very, very fortunate when you have a record that, first of all, is great. Second of all, that you have a record label that believes in it. Third of all, that radio is interested in playing it. Fourth of all, that it catches on with the listeners. And then fifth of all, that you actually make some kind of return from your investment, you know. It's the competition is fierce, and you know, so it's just part of the gig. I mean, we all know the stories of how a rock band gets together and they're fantastic, you know, everything, the sky opens up and everybody's a star. But you know, behind every successful band, there's probably, you know, 500,000 unsuccessful bands that were hoping for such a blessing.
When you get, you know, when you put that effort, you know, Helmet Boy and, you know, John Hammer, and those don't quite pan out, is it one of those things? I mean, are you extremely disappointed and you think this was my shot and I didn't make it, or do you kind of brush yourself off? And I mean, especially at a young age like that, where you don't have the experience, you know, I mean, it's different when you're maybe in your 30s and 40s and, hey, I know how this is how the music business works, I'll be okay. But when you're young like that, was there ever a time where you're like, maybe, okay, that was my shot and I've missed it? Or was it, you know, I'll be okay, I got belief in myself?
It wasn't until a little later on A&M Records that it was on me. This was my name, Glen Burtnik, you know, and I put out these 2 albums that just didn't make me into the big star that I was hoping, you know. So that was the bigger disappointment. Whereas with Hammer and with Helmet Boy, I was a member of a band and really wasn't in control. I wasn't in control of those 2 projects. I was a player, you know, I was part of it. I sang, I wrote, but it wasn't necessarily the albums that I wanted to do, you know. So it was really when it was personal, that's when it kind of felt like, ouch, this this didn't go as well as I expected.
So you regroup and you sign with A&M Records to put out a couple solo.
Let me interrupt.
Yeah.
After Helmet Boy, you know, I got more involved in songwriting and things. And Jan Hammer called me up again, and he said he's making an album with Journey's guitarist Neil Schon.
So this is after Helmet Boy, correct?
After Helmet Boy,
okay.
Yeah.
What year would this be for time frame?
81, 82, 83. And
so Neil's at the top
so
of the world at this time.
Yeah. And they finished an album, but they still didn't have the single. And Jan called me and he said, "Hey man, we need your help." Very flattering.
Mm-hmm.
So I went up and the three of us banged out a song called "No More Lies." And that got a lot of MTV airplay. And predominantly it was Jan on drums, me on bass, Neil on guitar and vocals. And so that had given me more of a taste of success because the song, like I said, there was a decent video and it got a lot of airplay on MTV and it sold some copies. So I made some money from my work on that record. I did, some background vocals and other things, but mostly it was the writing of that single that made me feel like, okay, I'm not going to give up show business.
Right.
I know I could do this. So it was after that I was signed to A&M Records to do a solo album in the mid '80s.
So for those listening, like I said, this is a Night Ranger podcast, and for those that maybe are new to Glen's career and everything, he released 2 albums in the 1980s, solo albums, that if you have not listened to, you definitely need to go check out. Talking in Code and Heroes and Zeros. If you're a Night Ranger fan, you're going to be a big fan of those 2 albums. And the other albums Glen has had, Palookaville, which is even better than those 2 albums. And so definitely check out these 2 albums that we're going to talk about here. So you signed to A&M. That has to be, an exciting time, especially in the music world. Your music that you're writing is very popular at the time, just like melodic type, hard rock. Night Ranger 7 Wishes comes out in '85. So Talking in Code comes out in 1986, your first solo album. Just take us back to then, and how old are you in 1986, and what does it feel like to do you feel like you finally accomplished what you wanted? Is it scary? I mean, what's going on in your mind with all of a sudden it's your name, your image, everything? It's everything you've worked to get. Now you have it. What's going on in Glen Burtnik's world at that time?
Well, I was 31 in '86, which at the time I thought that was old. But I still didn't have enough confidence in myself. So even though I wrote all the songs on the album, I did allow myself to go with, the record label said, we want you to have a producer. And I had a couple of choices, and I went with a guy that I just didn't, when the record was done, I didn't like it, but I was still young enough to think, even though I think it could be better, maybe these guys know. Maybe these big shots at the record label and this producer that's had some hits, maybe these guys know, and I'm still just a kid, and they're gonna lead my way into show business, And so the first record, Talking in Code, came and went. We had a little success with there it is. We had a little success with a song called Little Red House, and the songwriting was okay on it, but it was a little too mechanical, a little too synth pop. So a year later, I just said, this is the way I'm going to do it now. And I made my next record, which was Heroes and Zeros. And, it was the era of big hair, and, Bon Jovi-itis had hit the world of music by then. Bon Jovi being a guy that I know and who actually asked me if I was interested in joining his band before he got signed, to which I wasn't interested. So there you go. What do I know? But that's okay. I wouldn't have, I would have just been a backup guy for his plan. But in any case, it was so for the next album, Heroes and Zeros. I played a lot of guitar. I played a lot of instruments, and it really was the way I wanted my '80s, the '80s Glen Burtnik to sound. And so I was happy, and I had Neil Schon and Bruce Hornsby, a few walk-ons during the making of that album. But I felt better about that album. There was a song called "Follow You," which was the lead single, which got a lot of airplay, and it was there we are, and it got there was a video that got a lot of airplay, and you know what, I got on Top of the Pops, and I got on Solid Gold, and so there was TV and touring, and there were a lot of fans. I mean, there were times where I'd walk out on a stage in the middle of a state I didn't really know. Like there was a time in Florida where I started playing a song, and when it came to the chorus, the whole audience, it was a big outdoor festival. It was like the whole audience was singing along with this song that wasn't a single. It was just a track off my album. So that was a great moment for me, So there were little bits of little tastes of success, which kept the hope flowing, along with my love for creating music by that point.
Now, speaking of that, that Florida show that you were just talking about, where everybody was singing the lyrics. I was in the military for almost 17 years, and a buddy of mine, who is about 10 years older than me, he had been in since '86, and I remember we were talking about 87, I think he said 87, 88, he spent in Germany, and we were talking about it, and I always remember him saying, he's talking about, being in his early 20s, how much fun it was, and I remember him saying that the doors would always be open, and that whole time, I was there, I heard a lot of Y&T Contagious, and a lot of Glen Burtnik Heroes and Zeros, and I was like, hey, I know, Glen Burtnik here, Heroes and Zeros. He was surprised, that, but I at that time kind of knew you from Styx, but I always just remembered. I thought you'd like to hear that story. Just 1987 somewhere, man. You were one of the popular favorites playing in the Germany Air Force dorm rooms. He said it was those two albums, man. He said just you could hear him all the time playing down the hallways. I want to go back to Talking in Code. Just something that's interesting that you said, and it's, I think, a lot more common than a lot of people, know that's not in the music business, is you said the album was done and you didn't really like how it turned out. And I know with like Night Ranger, they recorded 7 Wishes, and they were in Japan. They got a copy of the album, they heard it, and they hated it. And people were always like, well, how could they hate it? It was them, and they're the ones that recorded it. And you try to say, well, you can record it, but it's you go through mixing and everything else, and it can turn into something totally different than what it was originally, what you originally had in mind. So what was it that when it was finished and you said you thought, well, I'm going to put my faith in these people that you think know more, what was it that you didn't like about the album?
To be fair, I went in on Talking in Code saying I wanted it to be, Don Henley at the time, he had the Boys of Summer. He had that was the era that was going on. And also Tears for Fears was happening. So I did walk into that album saying, I want a modern sounding album, that was the modern sound at that point. I want an album with heavy drum machines and wild synthesizers and gang vocals and power chords and and big hair. And so I share some of the blame, but nevertheless, what happens is, and I'm sure this relates to your Night Ranger story, is that many producers, I mean, the producer is on the line to make a successful album. They come in and they really, a lot of producers just take over and say, I don't like this song. We're not going to use that song. We're not going to record that song, or we're not going to put it on the record. I don't like this line. I want you to change that lyric. I don't like the way the drum beat is in this song. I don't like the way that song came out. I want you to record it again. And this time I want to bring in a string section or horns or something. A lot of times producers are in the position to take care of that because musicians are, writing the songs, performing the songs, but they're not behind the glass. So a lot of times it's that. In fact, when you go back in time in the 50s and 60s and 70s, the musicians had almost nothing to do. There would be a singer that would walk in and sing a song that was put in front of them with a bunch of backup musicians, and if they were lucky, they'd ever hit record. So that kind of happened to me, in that the producer of Talking in Code, really, I felt like my input was less and less as the project rolled on. And, and so had I wanted to change the direction of the album midstream, it was a battle, So eventually it came out the way it did. I hemmed and hawed, and I said, well, I wouldn't have done it that way, but this guy, he knows more than me, I guess. And what happened really was the disappointment of the record really not getting any further than the things I had done with Jan Hammer and Helmet Boy made me feel like, why did I just go through that? Why did I allow somebody else to take charge of my music when I know what I want to do? So that's part of it. It sounds, when I listen to Talking in Code, I'm getting nicer towards it now as I get older, because I do recognize there's some really good songwriting on the album. And I sang really high back then, but it just didn't strike me as sincere. And whereas my next album, I felt, okay, that's more sincere for me.
Do you think if Talking in Code was released a year prior, or maybe even 2 years, like in 1984 instead of 86, do you think it would have done any better than it did? I mean, timing sometimes is just as important as the songs.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
for sure.
And to me, again, I was only 9 years old in 86, but just looking through, it's almost like the music was really changing in 86. You were getting the Poisons and the Bon Jovis and that glam kind of look, to where that album kind of reminds me of stuff that just came out in 84 and 85. To me, I could, obviously be wrong, but I think if that album had come out just a year prior or 2 years prior, maybe would have had a whole different, maybe a whole different outcome. But, obviously no way to ever know that. But Heroes and Zeros, you said, was more of a personal album, that you had more input on it. At that time, how's your relationship with A&M?
It was good. I enjoyed, really what I liked was the promotion staff. I liked hanging out with those people. A&M was a very cool label. it was on the Charlie Chaplin's movie lot. You know, Chaplin sold it, and it ended up being A&M Records, and it was like a summer camp. It was just this amazing creative place, and there was this beautiful recording studio in the middle of it. It was so it was a lovely time in LA. I was disappointed that I hadn't been turned into, I hadn't been as successful as my friends Marshall Crenshaw and John Bon Jovi. I was kind of like, well, what's missing here? So that's why for the second album, I was like, listen, guys, if I'm gonna fail, let me fail on my own. Let me take charge. And I have to say that they did react when I handed in my next record. The label got really excited and went for it. I think they went for it. I at the same time, I was up against Sting and Bryan Adams and Janet Jackson. There were these other acts on the label at that moment that were, of course, going to take priority because they were selling records like hotcakes. So what you say about timing is absolutely true and hard to tell. When I get my hands on one of those time machines, I'll find out. But you do what you do. You do your best, and if it doesn't fly as well as you like, then you just get back to work.
Now, Heroes and Zeros, like I said, was a big hit in the German dorms at the Air Force Base. But you had Neil Schon was on the album, Anton Fig, big drummer, David Letterman's band, played a lot with Ace Frehley, played drums on it, Chuck Berge. Now, there is one Night Ranger connection on that album, which was you had David Prater, I know, played drums. Did he help you produce that album?
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. David's a really talented guy, and I asked him, because I had heard the demos that he was making, and I really liked it. So, producing your own record also it's kind of asking a lot in a way, all by yourself, because you're over there on one side of the glass singing, and then you got to run into the studio and say, did that sound okay? There's a lot of pressure, and I thought, and I loved how David recorded drums and other things. So I asked David to help, and he did the lion's share of the production work. The sound was him. So David, now what was David's connection to
David? So when Night Ranger got back together in '91, this is minus Jack Blades, it was Kelly Keagy, Brad Gillis, and they got a new bass player singer called named Gary Moon, and they recorded an album that was released in '95 called Feeding Off the Mojo, and David Prater was their producer. So he,
what year?
That would have been 1995 that was released.
All right, so that's years later.
Yeah, but so this is kind of how I learned, reading the stuff off of Heroes and Zeros. I see David Prater, but I see him as a drummer, and I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's the same David Prater. And I, obviously did some research and saw that that's how he kind of started his career. And just one of those little, the more interviews I do with musicians, you kind of see how these webs, kind of work, and everybody's kind of connected. And it doesn't, you could, when it comes to like that Kevin Bacon game, you usually don't have to go very far to find a connection, usually between musicians. So Heroes and Zeros is released. Follow You, gets some airplay. Do you have a third album, on the contract? Where do you go after the Heroes and Zeros?
Oh my gosh, it was like some really ugly thing happened. When you hang out at a label long enough and you don't really have big hits, that's a precarious position to be in. the A&R guy that signed me to A&M Records moved on to another label. So there I was. There
Now,
was a new A&R.
Was that John Carter?
Yes, it was.
Okay.
Who, he's like a legend, that guy, you know, like he was involved in some really important records, and I loved him. You know, he was great. And of course I loved him because he signed me to A&M Records. You know?
Well, I think, 'cause I saw somewhere that maybe in another interview that you had mentioned him, and I think David Lauser said that he was the one that signed Sammy Hagar. So again, just in this last interview, they mentioned John Carter. So, but that's another story that comes into a lot of musician stories, is they're signed by one regime. The regime leaves, the new regime comes in. And is that basically what happened to you? There's a new regime, and you're kind of the odd man out, or?
Yeah. I'm going to backtrack here a second because I forgot there was a project that I was almost on. Neil Schon. This is before Talking in Code. Neil Schon and Sammy Hagar were putting a band together. And Neil Schon wanted me on bass, and Sammy Hagar wanted somebody else, Kenny Aronson, and so we all got together, and it turned out that, you know, Sammy insisted for his guy, so that Hagar, Schon, Aronson, Shreve was an album that I was supposed to be on there for a second, and then it turned out differently. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that because you mentioned Sammy. I'm like, oh yeah, Sammy from that. At that time, I didn't know John Carter, and I certainly didn't know that, you know, the guy that was about to sign me to A&M Records in a year or two was the guy who, you know, was important in Sammy's career, you know.
That would have been a big album to be on. Now, the album didn't do as well as they thought it would, but
yes,
it's still, having your name attached to it would have been definitely a little career boost there. But so I've never heard that story, so very, very interesting to hear that. I think I actually have that album over there to my left. So did you have when you signed, do you sign that contract for so many albums? You know, is it, you know, 3 albums? If we don't want the third one, we can buy you out. You know, when you signed that, where were you at after Heroes and Zeros? Did you owe them anything, or was you contractually complete at that time?
They had the option, as I recall, to either move on for a third album or drop me. Yes, I owed them because I didn't really make much of the money back. I mean, you know, each album cost over $100,000 to record back then. So I was probably in the hole, and after videos and everything else, I might have been in the hole, like, you know, $500,000 to $1 million, you know, that they didn't really make much back. So technically I owed them that money. Had I had another album and it was a massive hit, they would have taken all that money, and then it would be the album after that I would start to see some kind of profit from. But so in came this new A&R regime, and after a year of, or it seemed like a year, trying to get up for another record, I had a manager at the time that threatened the A&R guy physically, and because we were frustrated. So my manager threatened, and the guy said, "Okay, I'm dropping Glen Burtnik." That's actually what happened. Crazy, but so that was the end of that. You know.
What year would this have been? 88, 89?
Yeah. Yeah, probably 89.
So you're at a little bit of a crossroads there, and um, is that about the time Styx comes a calling?
Yeah, maybe a year after that. Yeah, I got a call from Dennis DeYoung, um, and they had known me because they were an A&M band,
Correct. Yep.
so they had paid attention to my records. And the thing about my records at A&M was that I was respected as a talented guy. I just didn't get the gold ring of sales, like so. But I got respect, and and that's probably me anyway. It's like I pat on your back by other musicians. But in any case, so Styx calls. I was never really a Styx guy. I didn't listen to Styx. You heard them on the radio and stuff, but I wasn't really into it. And but at that point in my life, I had a wife. I had 2 kids at the time, and it was like, well, that sounds like that they needed. Tommy Shaw was on the road. He had joined Damn Yankees. Wow, the story. The story, as it was told to me, was Styx had been broken up for 6 years, and then they said, let's get back together. Let's reunite, make another record. And when they finally got everything in Damn Yankees, so that they need somebody in Tommy's position. They called me. They liked the music I was working on, which was going to be for my 3rd A&M album, a song called Love is the Ritual, a song called Edge of the Century. They liked that stuff, and they said, well, you want to join our band?
So you were working on a solo album when they basically called you to audition for the group. I mean, so you had a handful of songs kind of ready to go on your own.
Yeah.
So joining Styx, I mean, that has to be a big decision because, I mean, yes, you have a wife and you have kids at home, but if you join Styx, a couple things. One, you're pretty much saying goodbye to your solo career. And another thing is, I don't know how to, Styx is always in the, I guess, the critics' eye, have never been the cool, acceptable band. And, you've mentioned in this interview, hey, I wanted my songs to be like, kind of like, you mentioned Don Henley or stuff like that, which was respected by critics. Was that something that ever, is that something you think about? Like, hey, if I do this, basically I'm going to be known from here on out as Glen Burtnik from Styx instead of just
Absolutely.
Glen Burtnik.
Absolutely. I felt like I was selling my soul to the devil. But again, I was a husband and a father of kids. I was a professional musician. I was, at this point, I'm in my 30s. And it's like, well, Glen, to be honest, I felt that way with Beatlemania. I felt like, well, that's corny, and that's, I love the Beatles, but dressing up and acting like I'm in the beat, like, wow, that's not, it wasn't my idea. For a guy that grew up listening to Bob Dylan, Jimi Hendrix, and the Beatles, that was not something that I wanted to be a fake Beatle, I wanted to be a real Glen, So in any case, there have been a number of times in my life where I just said, well, here's a job, and here's a good paying job in the field that I'm good at and that I love. So I also saw it as a challenge. Maybe I can make Styx cooler. That was really my approach. my fantasy maybe, because Styx fans love Styx, and by me trying to change Styx, that's kind of a foolish thing to do. You don't take Coca-Cola and change it into a completely different flavor, and if you do, you might lose all the people that love Coca-Cola. So in any case, yes, I definitely knew that. Well, there goes any hope of me being taken seriously by critics. And you can sit around and read critics all you want, and read Rolling Stone and read all that stuff, but it means nothing. It's just some guy's opinion, and meanwhile, I managed to buy a house. I managed to put my kids through school, so it seemed like the more practical approach than being a starving artist.
Mm. So you get the offer to join Styx. This is 1990. While you guys are recording this new album, Tommy Shaw is in Damn Yankees with Ted Nugent, Jack Blades of Night Ranger. And was there any resentment from, I would say, Dennis or the other guys of Tommy kind of, rejecting them for Damn Yankees? Was there any competition? Were they aware of Damn Yankees? Was it something that drove them, or was it just, did they give two shits less?
How could they not feel competitive? I'm sure they wanted to excel. And I also think they might have felt burned that Tommy said he was going to be part of the reunion and then opted out. That must have that must have been disappointing and a pain in the neck, and so there was that. I didn't want to know, I really wasn't going to pay any attention. Of course, I ended up getting an earful, but this wasn't my battle. I really didn't care. And to be honest, I preferred Tommy's music. Of the three, writers in Styx, I always preferred Tommy's songs, but that didn't matter. I had a job to do. There is that story of how one night, I think it was a New York State Fair or something, I looked down in the audience, I'm singing, Renegade or something, and there's Tommy Shaw. There's Tommy Shaw standing there. And it was, and now the problem then was that Damn Yankees did this they had a shtick on their tour that Tommy would pick up the acoustic guitar and start to sing Babe. And maybe I had this wrong, but Ted Nugent stops and he comes over and he grabs Tommy's guitar and he smashes it. And then then they have a dummy that came down with a Styx t-shirt, and Nugent fires a flaming arrow into the Styx t-shirt, and so there were moments in the Damn Yankees show reportedly that made fun of Babe and Styx, and so that Dennis took very personal, especially Babe, especially the Babe thing, because Dennis felt very personal about that song, and it was one of their biggest hits.
Yeah, I've never heard the Styx t-shirt thing, but yes, he would come out playing Babe. Ted would come out and say something about, we're not going to play, that pussy song or something, and then he would take the guitar and smash it. During that time, I think the person that they were shooting the arrow at was Saddam Hussein, because the whole Gulf War thing. But I've never heard the Styx shirt, but it could be. I've just never heard that. So that had to be kind of That's got to be kind of almost Twilight Zone like. You're up there with Styx singing Renegade, and there's the dude that you've replaced looking up at you. Did you guys ever, at that time, talk or anything? Cross paths or,
Tommy?
Yes, back in the early 90s part. I mean, did you guys talk after that show or anything like that?
Yeah, well, what happened specifically that night was I think they didn't allow Tommy backstage to say hello. And, but the next morning, he was staying in the same hotel, and the next morning they did get together. Behind some closed door, it was Tommy and Dennis had a powwow. From what I understood, Tommy apologized for making Dennis feel bad about the whole babe thing. I had met Tommy earlier. I had a manager when I was on A&M, Bud Prager, who also happened to manage Tommy. So I had met Tommy one or two times briefly. Yeah, I really wasn't involved.
Okay.
And I didn't want to be involved.
Well, sometimes that's sometimes the best way to go about things. I do that a lot in my life. I want to go back to the recording of Edge of the Century. The songs that you wrote for that album, were they were already written before you joined Styx? Is that correct?
Not all. Edge of the Century and Love is the Ritual was. So the first single off that album was a song that it was going to be on my solo album, and then as well as the title track. Edge of the Century was a song that I had written for my album, but so those two were ready. But there were other songs. There was a song, World Tonight. There was another song that I wrote with Dennis, All in a Day's Work. Sat down with Dennis, wrote a song. And then there was one more that the three of us, JY, Dennis, and myself, wrote, which was Love at First Sight. So, I just got a bunch of songs on the record. And, but, half and half maybe. Half were written before and half during.
When you were writing the songs after you joined Styx, were you just writing what you felt, how you felt, or were you trying, did you ever go into, okay, I'm in Styx, I gotta go down this lane, did it give you, I guess, borders on your songwriting, or did that ever, did you just keep continuing to write whatever you wanted to write and hope that it fell within the Styx, genre?
Yeah. Well, never in a million years would I have thought that Love is the Ritual or Edge of the Century were Styx songs. I never would have dreamed that Styx would ever put out an album with those songs like that on it, And then once I was in Styx, I had this other role in my mind. I was like, okay, I want to bridge, the old Styx with a new, rejuvenated Styx. I wanted to be the hero. I wanted to come in the last act and come up with some hits. And so that bridge was All in a Day's Work and Love at First Sight, which were Dennis. I wrote songs for Dennis to sing because Tommy Shaw's Styx songs, it's harder to tell who it is, what band it is. Whereas when Dennis DeYoung is singing, you know it. That's just the way it is. That guy's voice is absolutely obvious. You know that voice. He doesn't sound like anybody else, and so I, at that point, once I was in there, I said, okay, I've got the single, I've got the title album track.
Yeah.
I need to write something that Dennis will sing, because that will make me more money as a songwriter.
I was going to get
songwriting royalties. That was that. By that point, that had become a very important thing in my life, that I was aware, because I had written these songs with Neil Schon and Jan Hammer and other projects. I was starting to see how important songwriting was financially.
Yeah, it's nice when the checks arrive in the mailbox.
Heck yeah.
I want to, a couple things before we move on from Edge of the Century was, I still remember the first time Edge of the Century would be my first Styx album, where I remember it being released and going to the mall and buying it and everything. I was at a skating rink, I think in Amanda, Ohio, and over the radio, they said that they had playing there in like the snack area. They said they were going to premiere the new Styx song, Love is a Ritual. Actually, it was a TV, it was a video. Actually, it was the video. And I remember standing there waiting for it to come on, and all my friends would tell me, let's go out in the, and skate and everything. I'm like, no, I want to see this. And I had to wait for the commercials and everything. So the first time I ever saw Styx and Love is the Ritual was at the skating rink in Amanda, Ohio. But I thought it was I think it speaks volumes about you, is you join this band and you get not only the title track, they name the album after your song. They release your song as the first video. I think that speaks highly of what you brought to the group. And my question going into that, you kind of talked about it a little bit, I think, just previous, but how was Dennis DeYoung as a producer? You mentioned producers with Talking in Code and doing your and Heroes and Zeros, kind of doing it your way, is but Dennis has always been the producer for Styx. Just talk a little bit about how Dennis was at being a producer. Did he bring a lot to the table? Was there some personality clashes with that? Was he almost a tyrant? Was he open to ideas? Talk a little bit about Dennis's role there.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, Dennis, he was not named as producer of previous Styx albums until Edge of the Century. And he may have been the producer, but he never. I don't think he got that credit until Edge of the Century, and it was something that he demanded, and it was something he deserved. They had some giant hits that were obviously Dennis. Babe, Mr. Roboto, Come Sail Away. The members of the group absolutely contributed, but really the guy at the wheel, beyond the shadow of a doubt, was Dennis. And I even think probably the production of Tommy's songs were really heavy on Dennis. So he deserved it, from my perspective. He deserved the production role. However, I will say this. Love is the Ritual predominantly was recorded in New Jersey with vocal overdubs so that you can hear Dennis and JY in the choruses. And maybe a drum overdub. Yeah, there was drums overdubbed by John Panozzo. But for the most part, I mean, that record, a lot of it a lot of the Styx record was recorded before I ever dreamed that I was going to be in Styx, which is okay. I was like, okay, I'm bringing this song. Do you really want to re-record all these parts? And it sound great. Let's just, you guys just add what you want to add to it so that, Dennis wanted it to make sure that it sounded a little bit like Styx.
Yeah.
And he felt that vocals are what makes it sound like Styx. So he made sure that his voice was on there loud enough that it sounds like Styx. So there were times where we butted heads, and I felt, like he took too much control.
Mm-hmm.
I wished that he had let me play a guitar solo instead of bringing in a clarinet player for a song of his, Back to Chicago. I had very little say in what songs were on the album. So if Dennis felt like bringing in a couple of songs, Carrie Ann and Back to Chicago, that was that.
Yeah.
But again, he deserved it. The guy, he was the head of this successful band. I wasn't. I was the new guy.
Yeah.
So I wasn't walking to democracy, put it that way.
So, Love at First Sight, which you just already alluded to, you co-write that with Dennis. You have Dennis sing it. It's released as a single, so we talked about how you can make a nice living being the songwriter in Styx, but also being a songwriter and having Dennis's voice on your song. The following year, you co-write a huge hit for Patty Smyth and Don Henley. Sometimes Love Ain't Enough. And you wrote that with Patty. How does a writing session like that get arranged? Are you guys friends, and does she just call you and say, "Hey, I'm doing an album. Will you come over and help me write?" Does managers get involved? How do you two end up in a room, end up writing a song?
Her manager was aware of me. Like I said, I kind of had I had a decent reputation by that point as a songwriter because of my A&M records.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't sell as much as I would have liked, but they certainly gave me the reputation of a worthwhile artist, musician. So her manager at the time, Mark Spector, called me up and said, "Hey man, would you like to write with Patty Smyth?" Now, I really liked Patty Smyth. I liked her voice a lot. I went to see her live, and I just thought she was great, and I liked The Warrior, I liked that song. So I was, I was like, heck yeah, and now Patty, she was kind of new to songwriting, but we sat down together, and it didn't. I don't know how quickly it popped out, but I'll tell you, it was my birthday. Gosh, I should figure out what year it was. It was my birthday. We were trying to write a rock song. We were writing in my manager's office. My manager, they had a birthday cake for me. So we took a break from songwriting so I could blow out the candles, la-di-da. And then we came back, and I sat up at the piano, and I just started goofing around. Nothing to do with the song that we had been working on. And from that, we came up with Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough.
Now, when you write a song like that, do you know right away, wow, this is something different, this is something special? Or is it just another song in a batch of songs that you've written for a project and eventually kind of, stands out from the rest? Or is it something you know right away?
I've fallen in love with a number of my own songs that I really thought were great. And then you find out that no, actually, that's not really getting much of a reaction from other people. But this song over here is what everybody loves. It's like, oh, that one? I didn't even work hard on that song. You know, I'm usually surprised. So what I'm saying is, I don't know. I don't know a hit from a flop. But I also believe that nobody else does. And here's why I say that. Patty Smyth recorded Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough with Don Henley, with Eddie Van Halen on guitar, produced by Ron Nevison, who was a huge producer. For her record, she was signed to Columbia Records, Sony, CBS Sony. And she finished the album, handed it in, and they said, Columbia said, you know what? We don't hear any hits. We're going to drop you. Patty took her songs and went over to MCA Records and boom, had a #1 hit. So all of the geniuses at CBS Sony who are in, you know, they have the responsibility of dropping artists and signing artists and what to promote and what not to promote. They don't know either, you know. Now maybe it's timing and all of the other ingredients, but I'm convinced that everybody has an opinion and they're as wrong as they are right.
Now, when it comes to songwriting in your songs, is it, if I name just a song off of Talking in Code, could you tell me where you were when you were writing it? Like, the songs you write, is it something like, hey, I remember that one, I could tell you where I was with this one, what I was thinking with this one, or does it just become, there's just so many that, you know, you may remember one or two, but the rest were just, you know, when you've written that many songs, can you still remember like where you were writing, let's say, Love is the Ritual?
A lot of it, yeah. A lot of it I can. That's very interesting. You win for a really interesting question.
Because they're almost like children. That's the way I would look at it. Is, you know, because they're so personal. That's why I asked that. You know, and you're really probably the first, you know, I would say professional songwriter I've had the opportunity to ask that. So that's why I was asking. So, yeah, so it is something that you kind of can take yourself back to each song and kind of remember maybe where you were or what you were feeling.
A lot of the time, yes. I will also say, though, they all don't just flow out of you in one fell swoop. So a lot of it is inspiration, and then there's a lot of perspiration because you come back to it and you say, you know what, this lyric could be better, or, oh, I got a better idea for the bridge, or this, you know what, let's try another drum pattern, you know, whatever. So there are the adjustments that I don't know that I can remember all of the moments writing all of my songs, but a lot of times I do have a memory of the general atmosphere, where it started, or little vignettes. Like sometimes, you know, I'll remember, I was sitting on this bed with my little Casio keyboard and I came up with that. Or, you know, things like that. I do remember a lot of that, which is amazing. And I've never thought of that before in my life, but I do remember a lot of it. Yeah.
And you kind of answered kind of another question I was going to ask, but you kind of touched on it just a few moments ago. I was going to ask you, was there ever a song that you wrote that you were like, okay, this is the song, this is going to be a hit, and it never did anything, but then there was a song that you wrote, you're like, okay, that may or may not make the album, but ended up doing, you know, being something bigger and better than you ever imagined? You know, do any of your songs fit in those categories?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, both.
All right.
I mean, I was often surprised at what Dennis DeYoung liked of mine. You know, like, when I sat down and showed him what I was doing with All in a Day's Work, which is like a ballad, you know, and he was interested in that. And I was, I mean, of course he's a ballad singer, but this, I started that as kind of a more R&B-ish kind of bluesier thing. And he took it someplace else. So I was surprised. But yeah, there are other songs that I really thought were going to be hits that just nobody really reacted to. And then, you know, Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough, my biggest pop single. Patty came up with most of the lyrics and the title. And I told her when she said, I think it should be Sometimes Love Just Ain't Enough. And I told her, you know, that's dark. That's not a hopeful message. And in my mind, a hit song should be something that lifts up the listener. Well, that's kind of an old school pop songwriter kind of rule that I had. So I really didn't expect that song to be as big as it was. So there you go.
Well,
I don't know.
But sometimes love ain't enough is a message or a feeling that connects with a lot of people too. So,
Yes.
you know, it doesn't really have to be uplifting, but it can be something that they kind of, hey, I've been there before, and takes them down probably down memory lane they haven't been down in a while.
For sure.
We've talked a little bit about All in a Day's Work, which is probably now when I'm 13, my 13-year-old ears are different than my 43-year-old ears. When I was 13, All in a Day's Work, I liked it. Probably wasn't my favorite song. But as you get older, you know, things change. I'm not 13 no more. You live a little life, and you grow to appreciate different stuff. And now, All in a Day's Work is probably one of my favorite songs off that album. And also, there's not very many songs that have an accordion solo. But I just wanted to tell you that All in a Day's Work is definitely one of my favorite songs. And when I play that song or play that album for non-Styx fans, that is usually the song they gravitate to. So it's definitely a song that, though wasn't a hit or a single, it's a song that I think a lot of Styx fans like, and people that I've known that I've played for have, you know, always like, whoa, that's a really good song, and come back to that. So it's just one of those songs that you've mentioned a couple of times I wanted to bring up. So going back to Styx, after that 91 tour, Styx is in a weird place because they don't have a record deal for the first time in forever. So how did that change? Did that change anything going on with the band? Did you and your success with Sometimes Love Ain't Enough, did that change anything within the band? Because now, you know, suddenly you're the one that has the last hit song written. What's going on after the tour, you know, with you and Styx?
You know, here's a true story. There was an attorney, big shot attorney that Dennis DeYoung had, and I love the fact that he wrote a book that's probably a pretty well, you know, pretty successful book. It's something like how to get a record deal or something, right? And he's a big shot as lawyers go. And Styx's contract was up after Edge of the Century.
Mm-hmm.
This lawyer went in, it was time to renegotiate for the new contract. And this lawyer went in and asked for the moon, you know, asked for too much, and A&M said, we pass. So that's the irony, that this is the guy that wrote a book about how to get a record deal who lost a record deal for a multi-platinum act, you know. So there we were, and it was just like, uh-oh, what do we do to that? So we started writing songs, and we had well, we were we thought that somebody else is going to want us. We'll get another record deal. But I guess it wasn't to be. I don't even remember, to tell you the truth. But we did put together 9 songs. It was a demo. It had some songs that I had done by myself. It had some songs that Dennis had done by himself. It had some songs that at least Dennis, JY, and myself had done together. Some of these wound up in different projects later. Mm-hmm. But in any case, we had this 9-song demo. And nothing came of it. It just, I don't know if we were asking for too much money or why it all went the way it went, but it just wasn't happening.
So this would be around 93, 94?
Maybe, something like that, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, if I'm not mistaken, that is when I had my big hit with Patty Smyth, but I don't know. Who the heck knows? In any case, so that demo, when deep Styx fans found out that there was a demo of songs that came after Edge of the Century, because I essentially left the band. I mean, the band was over for a couple of years, and so it became this legend among Styx fans that there were these 9 songs, and the legend grew in time because it was something that was unreleased, and 9 songs is almost an album.
Yep.
So the legend grew, and so the other day I found my copy of those demos, which in the legend, as legend goes, it was named by some Styx fans as Son of Edge of the Century. So in any case, so I have a copy of that, and I've been kind of turning people onto it, and kind of selling copies. But so after that, Tommy came back. They did a reunion tour in '96 and '97, I think it was.
Yep.
John Panozzo passed away.
I want to, before we go down that route, so how did you mentioned you left Styx? How did that happen? Did you just call Dennis one day and said, "Hey, I'm moving on to different things"? Was it just where you guys, he stopped calling and you stopped calling, or was there ever an actual discussion where, okay, I'm done, I'm out? How did you and your first tenure with the band actually end?
That's a really good question, and I don't remember. I don't think it was official. I don't think anything was official. I think that we just kind of didn't have any work to do. Mm-hmm. I should say that James Young, JY, he's a gentleman. He's a really good guy, and personally, and he knowing him, he would have reached out to me and said, we're going to do a reunion tour, and I hope you don't mind or whatever. And by the way, in that interim, he did record some of my other songs that I had written for Son of Edge that Dennis didn't like. But in any case, yes, there was no grand long or anything. It was just kind of that was okay. That.
you mentioned John passed away in 1996. Now, John was the original drummer for Styx and was the drummer on the Edge of the Century album and tour. Were you and John close? Can you talk a little bit about, John and your relationship with him?
Great guy, funny as can be, really cool guy, and a twin. What a thing that twins are in a band. That was an experience that I don't think I'll ever have again.
Mm-hmm.
His brother was a bass player and John was a drummer, and John, at the height of his powers, was an important drummer, in classic rock music of the era.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. I just loved hanging out with him. Yeah,
I just, being a fan, there's not a lot of interviews with him, and he's the one member I don't know much about, so I just wanted to give you a little time to talk about him. I love I always look, when I play the song Castle Walls off Grand Illusion, there's this musical break, 3/4 of the way into the song, and I just always look forward to his drums in that break. It's just, I don't know, it's just, you turn the radio up real loud. It's just, not very often is it this set of drums that in a great song do I look forward to hearing, and it's actually, it's his in that song. So if you don't know what I'm talking about, go grab Grand Illusion, go grab Castle Walls, and turn it up really loud, and listen to John perform at his best. So 1996, you're back on your own and you're working on Palookaville. Is that right?
Yeah. That was the next album that I made, and it might be my proudest solo album that I ever made. And my friend Alan Douches helped me with the production, as did my friend Plink Gilio. But a lot of it, I had a home recording rig, and I did a lot of it at home. I played most of the instruments on the album. So that was really a kind of a personal, musically personal record of mine. I also had a lot of time to work on it because I took these songs that I was writing that weren't like Styx songs, and I just kind of took the best of the bunch and put it all together in this wacky record, which I'm still proud of to this day.
It's probably my favorite record of yours. If you're out there and you are looking, so many people always talk about there's no good music out there or whatever. If you do not have or have not listened to Glen Burtnik's Palookaville, track it down. I do know it's on Amazon Music. You can stream it there, so you may get a few pennies from it. But have you reissued it any on your site, like in physical form or anything?
No, and we've been talking about doing that. Yeah, there's been a lot of talk about it, but it's a weird time to do that because everybody is getting very used to not paying for music, listen to on Spotify, and B, just listening to one or two songs by an artist and not listening to entire albums. In this particular season here, or this era that we're in, albums don't cut it, So it would be a collector's item. The world is not waiting for the re-release of Palookaville, but I will say that Alan Douches, whose record label put it out, talking about he wants to re-release it. Marty Scott at Gem Records would like to re-release it. Andrew McNeese of Melodic Rock.
I'm friends with Andrew.
A lot of, and that's very flattering that everybody wants to re-release it, but I don't know that I'm going to put up money to re-release it.
Yeah. Well,
And you can still find them out there, you know.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, I got my physical copy obviously years ago, but I know it's out of print. That's why I told people Amazon would be probably the only way you could readily go listen to it. But it's a great album.
thank you. I have seen copies online for over $100. I will say that, but I've also seen copies online for 20. You
Yeah.
know, but somebody just sent me a link the other day to like eBay or something. It was $127 for Palookaville. Cracked me up.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's out of print, and it's in the melodic rock world. It's a great album, and that's why I always, when I'm talking about to people, hey, is there something new you can listen to, or something you can go back into the vaults and it's good. That's always one of the albums that I pick out. And going into that album, again, the Styx World comes calling to you in 1996. They're putting out a Greatest Hits Volume 2, and they're looking for songs, and they contact you again and use one or two songs from that album, correct?
I guess, yeah, you're talking about It Takes Love to Make Love, which was one of the songs which was part of this Son of Edge.
Okay, so that was from Son of Edge. And the other song was Little Susie.
Yeah, so and they used it on that album. Yeah, I think that was it.
So that's got to be...
Oh, and wait, yes, you're right. And there's a Little Susie, or Little Susie.
Yeah, I think they...
Which they did their version of a song of mine called Little Susie, which I also made into Little Lucy.
Yeah,
was my version.
Which was on Palookaville.
Palookaville, right.
Yep.
Right.
So that had to be nice that they are doing the reunion and releasing 2 Glen Burtnik songs on their reunion tour for with Tommy Shaw. So that had to be nice in the pocketbook. When I saw them in '96, they actually performed Little Susie live. I did not know at the time that it was written by you, but they did. So you do Palookaville, and on there you have a song called Spirit of a Boy, which probably becomes maybe your second most highest ranking song, eventually re-recorded by Randy Travis.
Yeah, and went to #1 by Randy Travis on the country charts. So I was thrilled. As a songwriter, I really admire country music, especially classic country music and artists like.
Don't get me started, Glenn. I'll talk to you for 2 hours about George Jones and Johnny Paycheck and. Because actually, if you notice right here, I'm going to talk to you later about Mr. Mac Davis. I got the CD behind me. All right, all right. So you got into classic country. Continue. I apologize. You get me all excited.
Yeah, no, that's cool. But so I was thrilled. I was thrilled to be part of to have written this song with Trey Bruce that ended up being a #1 country hit for a classic artist like Randy Travis.
And that kind of, that was kind of bringing him back too, because in country music, if you don't have a hit for an album or two, they almost forget you. And he hadn't had a hit for a year or two, and I just remember hearing that song, like, oh, it's he's kind of like he's back. Did moving to Nashville or ever focusing on writing for Nashville cross your mind after that with that success?
I would have liked to, and maybe I should have. But I took a couple of trips down there, and nothing really came of it. And here's another story. I was trying to get to know the people in the. I was signed to a publishing company. And I was trying to get them interested in promoting my songwriting in Nashville, their Nashville office. And so I would give them songs that I thought were country ready, and they didn't hear it. And in particular, I had a meeting with this one guy that said, I don't think these are country songs. And then a year later, he was at this special award ceremony where I was given an award for writing this Randy Travis hit. And once again, it proved to me that nobody knows, even the experts don't know what's going to work, So, but in any case, maybe I didn't put enough effort in or whatever, but I just wasn't connecting in Nashville. Maybe had I moved down there, maybe,
So how does?
But I was still a rock guy, though,
How does Spirit of a Boy end up, in the Randy Travis world? Was he cruising down the highway one day with his Glen Burtnik Palookaville CD and, hey, I'm going to record that song? Or, was it just managers, songwriters, or something? The other songs.
His producer had produced Mark Colley's version of it. So and then that didn't really fly. And then his producer was producing Randy's new record, and they were looking for songs, and the producer said, I know a song. I remember working on a song that might work for you. So it was really because of that.
Okay. It's just interesting. I always, how does one song from Palookaville end up with Randy Travis? It's always interesting to hear.
In the ending, you can bet everyone's a loser. Kiss your ass goodbye. Boy, you're out of time.
Hey, everybody, we're back. How about that episode? Wasn't that fun? I loved it.
Did you guys learn anything?
Yeah.
So, anyways, that is the first part. Next week we'll have basically part 2. And if I should have mentioned this in the beginning, is we were having storms actually on Glenn's end and my end, so there is a little glitch in there that I had to edit. So if you see that, that's what that was. The second time around, because we didn't get to finish everything we talked about. So part 2 next week will be basically the second time that we talked, and basically will take us to the present day of his career, and we kind of go over some more stuff about Styx and his career as well. So anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Definitely a lot of cool stories. I mean, it's long, but we dig, we do a deep dive into the history and just get all the cool stories, and I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I did.
Yeah. Well, thanks for doing it, Josh, and I look forward to the next episode.
Yep. And Brent, you got anything before we sign off?
No, just thanks for everybody watching. Don't judge Josh without us. He did his best. Though he did a damn good job.
I would say sometimes just Josh is enough.
This will be the episode where, kind of like how it used to be the Police, and then it became more of Sting with the Police. This is where
he was a big douchebag.
This will be the episode where it used to be Fans in Motion, and now it's going to be Joshua Weaver with Fans in Motion.
In your fields of gold.
wait, it's not Josh Stofferson?
Well, I got to have that's my professional interviewing name.
That's his Sting name.
Yeah, there's what the original art was going to be. Fans in Motion presents Josh Goes Solo with Glen Burtnik of Styx.
There's going to have to be a trademark symbol beside Josh from now on.
Yeah.
It seems like Brent has too much time on his hands.
Dun, 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 dun.
I will show you the way. I do everything.
Hey, that is a Glen Burtnik Styx album. There you go. And on that note,
that's why I did that.
if you guys are on the YouTube page, subscribe, leave us some messages. Go to the Facebook page as well. And on that note, we will see you next week. Later.
You didn't choose life, it's just your luck. You got your turn now. Give it up and kiss your ass goodbye. What's left to say when it's over, everyone but you